The meeting to order at 6:36. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? First order of business is to report out that there were no votes taken in executive session. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of 2/28/19 and executive session 2/28/19.
Make a motion to approve the executive session minutes and seal them.
Motion by Mrs. Picard. Second by Mr. De Silva. Any questions? All those in favor? Motion carries. Appointments, I'll turn it over to the Superintendent, Mr. Goho.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At this time, I'd request the advice and consent of the school committee to appoint as our human resource generalist, Joan Topalian, whose resume is included in your packet.
Move that we accept the recommendation of the superintendent.
Motion made by Mr. Marciano,
Second.
seconded by Mr. De Silva. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Is she here? No.
No, she is not. At this time, Mr. Chairman, oh, yeah, what was that, Mr.? No, okay. At this time, it gives me great pleasure and lots of excitement to make a recommendation, which was the unanimous recommendation of the interview team, which convened recently, to interview candidates for the position of Director of Special Education for the North Providence School Department. We are ecstatic that we had a candidate as accomplished and as respected as the one we are recommending tonight. So it is with great pleasure that I recommend to the school committee and ask for their advice and consent to appoint Cynthia Van Avery as the Director of Special Education for the North Providence School Department.
I make a motion that we accept the resignation, the recommendation, excuse me, of the superintendent.
Motion by Mr. Marciano,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mr. Pollock. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Congratulations, Ms. Van Avery.
Welcome to North Providence, Ms. Van Avery.
Next item on the agenda, the chair will entertain a motion to authorize the approval to purchase the property that abuts McGuire Elementary School to expand the play area at McGuire. Motion by Mr. Andriozzi, seconded by Mr. De Silva. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, I'll turn the meeting over for a 2020 budget workshop to Mr. Gonzalez, our Finance Director.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have about 12 slides, which is a comparison to budget presentation for 19 and the comparison to 20 and material changes to that budget. If you don't mind, I'll get right into it. Can you hear it? The first slide covers a difference between what was projected in 19 to what I am projecting for 20, which is about a $300,000 difference. This is a snapshot. Slide 3 shows a snapshot of what was budgeted in 19 and what I am requesting for in 20. The biggest item is the local appropriation here, which is 1.1 million. In the prior year, they did ask for the 5844. It just was not granted. Next slide covers projected budget expenses as of today. Slide 5 covers the projected FTE count. Identified on the contracted teachers line are 2 FTEs, specifically for contract negotiations for, these were approved in contract negotiations with the teachers union, and that's covering a social studies teacher. Who's my other one? I'm sorry. Joe, can you help me for a second? I'm sorry. There's 2 FTEs in the contract for the contracted teachers. They were approved. It was the is the athletic director. I just want to be
Correct. The current teacher contract calls for the establishment of a full-time athletic director,
social studies teacher.
and then theoretically, the one person or the 2 people within the school system who could apply for the position. Well, anybody could apply for it, but the 2 current athletic directors, one of them would probably be the full-time athletic director, and then that position would have to be filled,
Which is the social studies.
which is potentially the social studies position, yes.
But these are contractual.
No, the social studies position is not a new position, but the funding of the athletic director position is the new position.
That's where I wasn't clear. I was a week ago, and getting into the minutia of developing this, it kind of slipped my mind on exactly the titles. Thank you. Is there any questions so far?
I don't, is it better to hold them at the end and let them get through the presentation? I want to make sure whatever works best for everyone.
Sure, it's up to you. I'll go back if that's what you'd like.
Preschool tuition, the projected going to 94,000, is that due to the change in universal pre-K? That you're projecting less?
No, it says preschool tuition, et cetera. There's actually 3 categories within that number. The preschool tuition is 50,000. Then there's the other category for property usage. And then there's miscellaneous grants included in that, small miscellaneous grants. So the primary carrier is the preschool at estimated $50,000.
So why do you assume, why are we budgeting for less? Is it because, is it the property usage, like what's coming in less?
The budget that was projected in 19, my projected for 20 is more in line with actual for the past 3 years. And that remains a constant through this entire presentation. My projection is based on actual over a 3-year look back.
Yeah, if any committee member has a question on the page that we're on, just jump in and ask the question.
Please interrupt me, please, with your questions. Yes, same page? Yep. I'm actually asking for the local appropriation that we need, not asking for supplemental at this point in time. Yeah, one of the last slides is going to identify exactly where that money comes, why it's missing in this year's budget and it wasn't in the past.
Yes,
It's
Steve, the additional
appropriation.
local appropriation is built into the first number, 33,693, that 1.142? Yeah.
So that on the budgeted side for 19, that was actually what the town authorized us for the past 5 years, which was $32,550,000. That's what they've given us for the past 5 years. I included what we actually need for 2020 in the local appropriation projected number. Any other questions for this slide? Something that jumps out at me on slide 4 is the purchase property and services category. We're seeing a reduction here because we are no longer going to be using the swing spaces for the alternate schools. Yep, 5 is the FTE count. That's on the screen.
I'm sorry, Mr. Andriozzi, I can't hear you. Could you use your mic? I apologize. Maybe it's the cold.
So it's just us. I'm forgetting where I'm sitting. So we went from projection in 19 of 13 principals and assistant principals to 14. The same thing with clerks. We went from 14 to 15, and I'm kind of confused if we're combining space, how we're adding instead of subtracting. If someone could help me with that.
I believe the numbers in 19 were based on where the school was in the month of March 2018. My projection is based on where we stand today.
So currently, we have employed 14 administrators.
That's correct.
Okay.
Included in that number is one vacancy, which is the high school principal.
Okay, I understand.
I'm not projecting forward
Going forward, I
to
understand.
eliminate one of the elementary school positions, the principal there. I know that she's on a 1-year contract, but I didn't feel it was prudent to just eliminate it for this projection.
Right, or assume something. Thank you.
The FY20 is in actuality what we have currently staffed.
That's factual. Slide
The
6.
reduction in the custodial staff is because of the closing of the school? No, closing.
No, that shouldn't be this, no, because he's saying that's the actual number that we have on staff right now.
23.5. That was
Current,
currently.
okay.
We currently have 23.5 custodians. Yes.
If I may, what's other?
We have a truant officer that's in that category. I have 3 positions in my team that are in this category now. There's an executive secretary in that role. There's a half FTE proposed for an additional truant officer. I believe that's all 5.5. So, with regard to the projections on this page, and I mentioned it earlier, the forecast, the 19 budget was where they stood in May of 2018. My projection is current now and a look back on what activity transpired over the past 3 years. But more importantly, where we stand currently. These are the FTEs we have in-house. And I think it's only adequate to include them in the projection, because I don't know any other way to do it. Slide 6 covers some of the basic changes in forecasts used for medical insurance or fringe benefits. We have a slight increase in my calculation for the working rate. The working rate has not been established by Blue Cross Blue Shield. That's scheduled to happen this month. So I did a look back, and I added 3% just to play it safe. There were some uncontrollable pension increases that just, that's just the way it is. Those are hard numbers that I can't change. I saw a slight trend in special education expenditures over the past 3 years, which is why I reflect a $55,000 increase. And that's a conservative number with no dramatic changes in the special ed need. projected utilities expenses goes down slightly because of the use of the swing spaces. One of those schools uses electricity to heat the entire school, so I'm hoping to realize some savings there.
Did we ever go online with the solar power?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
I've only seen National Grid bills come through the office.
yeah, I thought we had something in the works with some solar power.
I'd have to get back to you, but I'm not aware.
Okay, thank you.
On slide 9, I'd like to talk about the reduction in transportation costs, even though we are contractually in line for a 2% increase. I'm estimating that because of the out-of-districting, the swing spaces, there should be some potential savings in the transportation costs, even though the rate, the increased rate is kind of counteracting it. But there's a lot of overages I see in the billing that comes from the busing company, and I'm hoping that once the students are just being transported around the district, we can have some real savings there.
That was my fault. So, because we should have less students on buses,
In the upcoming year?
possibly, because, well, right now, we've offered up busing for every student at McGuire and every student at Stephen Only because of the swing space. And after the treacherous start of the school year a year and a half ago, I would think that our contract, they would owe us money at this point.
Yeah.
I would love to have a conversation with the busing company around any increase that they think that they would expect based on some of the dealings we've had. I don't know if the chairman wants to put together a smaller, this is interesting to me because if anything, like I said, they owe us money.
I agree with you.
If I may ask about the CTE tuitions?
Sure.
So this is just Davies and Met. There is, my understanding is we had someone also going out of district to a private Catholic school. That doesn't count? Is that not in there, or is that in there?
Davies and Met were the largest 2 recipients, but there are other schools within the CTE category, and some of the schools include placement by the court system.
Correct, that's what I'm asking about, so.
Yes.
Okay. So that number reflects that as well?
Projection, yes,
Okay, thank you.
with no additional increases. It's really difficult to forecast what the court is going to do in a year and 6 months, so I'm just doing a trend analysis through a look back.
Mr. Andriozzi, was your question about a student placed in a Catholic school? Yes. Yeah, well, speaking about the circumstances, that would fall under ODP, special education ODP. Correct. It's not in the, but it's in the one above it.
Slide 7 shows a reduction in our capital outlays due to closing the new schools and the 2 new schools opening. That's basically our lease payments for the past year, which will be eliminated, with a few offsets of investing in some small technology throughout the district for aging equipment. The slide 11 is probably one of the biggest highlights of this presentation, and it outlines the significant reduction in state aid that the town's receiving this year in comparison to what it's received over the past 5 years.
So essentially, Ron, when looking at this slide, we're getting approximately $1.2 million less from the state. That's why we're asking for the local appropriation to be approximately 1.1 to
That's correct.
make up that loss that we're not receiving from the state. Is that how the numbers work?
That's exactly how it works. Basically, the town has given us level funding for about 5 years, and we've been able to offset through the increased state aid that the towns received over the past 5 years. But with that significant reduction, I think we have no choice
We're
but
not
to
gonna
ask,
get in 20.
which we are not getting in
We're
20.
gonna get a reduction of about 1.2.
It's a reduction in the amount of state aid that we've received.
It is a reduction if we're doing a look back on how many. These are all increases from year over year. That's correct.
You are correct, yes. So
Depends on
we
how you
are
look at it.
we are receiving an increase in state aid of 202,331. What he's saying is it's significant. It's right. So it's a $1.2 million less than the state's MOE, maintenance of effort, and so we need to make that up somehow.
Mr. Chairman, would that be why we accepted 2 resolutions from, on the last meeting, from Smithfield, and I don't recall the other one, North Kingston? Maybe we should consider doing our own resolution to mirror theirs.
Yeah, I believe what'll happen, Rod, is that Tim Duffy, the executive director of the School Committee Association, will present his case on behalf of the school committees to increase the state aid, but we're just never gonna know that number probably until sometime in June.
If I may just go on to the last slide, this shows a look back on the town appropriation for the past 4 years. And it's been very steady, and the only increase this year forecasted is due to not having an additional $1 million from the state aid that they've been receiving over the past 5 years, over the prior year. These are just projections, and this is a live document. I don't anticipate any material changes. I'd be more than happy to discuss any of this with anyone on the committee. But it is a live document, so as information comes to me, I'd like to update.
I would say, Ron, if you get any additional information prior to March 27th, which is our next regular meeting, certainly ask to be placed on the agenda to update any numbers that we need to update or any changes. That be
Problem.
fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Just a comment, please.
Mr. Marciano?
Yeah, Ron, I like the way you presented this budget because all the years I've been here, this is about the best presentation that I can remember as far as simplifying things rather than getting a bunch of papers and a bunch of numbers all scrambled up. So did a very good job.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, are we having a budget hearing prior to the 27th?
We have to have a public hearing.
Yeah.
As soon as Rod feels comfortable with some finite numbers, these are all projected numbers at
Right.
this point.
Yep.
But I would say probably sometime in April. I'm not sure if you're gonna have finite numbers in April in terms of pension, healthcare costs.
One of the biggest kickers is that working rate for healthcare costs that should be identified later on this month. I mean, aside from that, there's unknowns that can happen at any point, but I would be a lot more comfortable with working rates.
So I would say sometime in April, we'll set up a public hearing. We'll set up a public hearing sometime in April prior to our regular meeting, or we'll have it during our regular meeting.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Rod?
Are you saying the public hearing would be the same date as the 27th? In the past, we've done that.
Yes. Whatever the date is, April, I don't have a calendar in front of me.
And Ron, do you know when we have to have this budget submitted to the municipality?
Informally, I was told we had an extension of 1 month due to some tax and regulatory laws that have to be changed. I
Okay.
think it was related to vehicle tax and the phase-out specifically. So, sometime in
1st?
May 1st.
Okay,
We'll have our public hearing April 24th. That's our April meeting.
okay.
That will be on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just add, Mr. Chairman, one point of information, when you receive state aid in the amount of 1.2 million, 1.3 million consistently for the last 3 or 4 years, and then all of a sudden you have a unexpected and unforecasted precipitous drop like that, it makes it very difficult for the committee and the school department to plan. Had you known that that kind of drop in state aid was coming, then steps could have been taken previously in the year or two previous to that. But the funding formula, ironically, has made state aid less predictable to cities and towns and to school departments. So I just wanted to put that out there. It's not because of a lack of planning that the school department or the school committee is in the situation of having to ask for what it's asking for to fill in the hole left by the state aid drop. But I do want to thank Mr. Gonzalez. I will say, since I've been on the job for a month, I've been thoroughly impressed with Ron and his work ethic. He's here 6 days a week. He works on the weekends, works at night, and he's had a lot of difficult situations that he's inherited, a lot of difficult deadlines, lack of information, jumping in the middle of the weeds without much, without a lot of support to figure out where to go and where to start. So you've done a great job keeping us on target and on budget, and the eye on the ball, and the fact that you were able to present this budget in a relatively timely manner with such precision at this time. I wanted to thank you on behalf of the school department and make sure that it was
Thank you.
recognized publicly.
Thank you.
There be no further business, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move we adjourn.
We have no public comment. Nobody signed up. So motion to adjourn by Mr. Marciano, seconded by Mrs. Picard. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.